Hi, everyone. As Paulo mentioned, my name is Jeff Gagnon. I'm a product manager here at Neo4j, and I'm joining you from our London office this evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be talking about how to explore data with some of the new features we've added in Neo4j Bloom over the past year, as well as some features that have been around in Bloom for quite a while that I think are really useful, and I just want to call out for folks who might not be familiar with them. We should have some time for questions at the end, so do feel free to post questions if you have them. So Neo4j Bloom is, of course, our graph visualization solution that works out of the box with Neo4j. And it provides a low-code, no-code way for analysts, data scientists, and developers to explore our data. Bloom is available for free with Neo4j Desktop if you download it. It's also available for free in Aura. And you can also use Bloom as an enterprise self-managed customer by hosting it as a web asset. Bloom comes in two varieties. There is a free version, as I mentioned, that's available in different modalities, including Aura and Desktop. And there's also a paid enterprise version that uses a server plugin that has some additional powerful collaboration features. I'll talk about a couple of those features at the end of the presentation. Some of the other things that I'll cover today are the new look and feel in Bloom. So if you've been longtime Bloom users, you might have noticed that starting in version 2.5, we've revamped the look and feel. Then I'll talk about some features for analysts that we've added, as well as some that have been around for a little bit longer, and features for customization. So these could be features that you use to customize Bloom for your own use as a developer, or if you're a developer who is working to empower other users of Neo4j in your organization who might not be writing Cipher code, some of these customization features can actually be really handy for you to be aware of so that you can create perspectives that allow different subject matter experts across different domains to use Bloom to all of its benefit. So let's get started with the new look and feel. I'll talk a little bit about the refreshed look that we have in Bloom since version 2.5. And I'll talk a little bit about specifically the new layout UI, and I'll call that out for a couple of reasons that I'll describe in just a minute. Then, of course, I'll talk about Workspace. We can't not talk about Workspace, this being the NODES2022 conference, where we've just released it publicly to anyone who wants to try it out. I'll talk about where Bloom fits into that philosophy. Then I'll talk about a couple of features that we've added into Bloom, partly to help with the Workspace ethos of helping users to get started with Neo4j more easily, but also that are available in the free standalone version of Bloom right now. And those features are specifically perspective autosync, and I'll explain what that is, as well as the show me a graph search phrase that's built into perspectives starting from Bloom 2.5. So I'll talk about what that is as well. So first of all, if you are a Bloom user, thank you. I hope you're enjoying the product. And you will have noticed that in version 2.5, we updated the look and feel so that it's more consistent with our other tools. And what we've done is adopted the Neo4j design language, which is also new. And this is, of course, helping us be more efficient, but it's also helping us provide a more consistent, more polished user experience. One of the things I'll point out specifically that we've done in the UI is if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of Bloom now, starting with version 2.5, you'll get the layout option as a drop-down menu. So we've always had a toggle in Bloom where you could switch between the two layouts that we offer. And those layouts are the force-based layout, which we also call sometimes the physics layout, or the hierarchical layout. So the one that sort of shows you what you see on the scene now is kind of like a snowball effect, or the hierarchical look where you have rows or columns of nodes that are connected in a vertical or a horizontal fashion. So we did have some settings related to those layouts in the old UI, but the settings were kind of in different places. Some of them were in the settings panel over in the left. Some of them were in the toggle selector itself. So what we've done is we've actually created a new UI around this where you use this drop-down menu and you can pick between the two layouts we have now. And then if you want to adjust settings for the given layout you have, you can use the settings icon right next to the drop-down, so that pencil icon there. We've done this for a couple of reasons. One of them is, depending on the layout you choose, there are going to be different types of settings that will apply. And the second reason is we do have plans to add more layouts to Bloom in future. So definitely keep your eye on this space and look forward to seeing new layouts appear in that menu with customizable settings that are applicable given the type of layout that you've selected. Now, I don't want to go too far into this presentation without talking about Workspace. Workspace is, of course, something that we launched today for general availability. It offers all of our key tools in one place. So Neo4j Data Importer, which is the import tab of Workspace, Neo4j Browser, which is the query tab of Workspace, and of course, Neo4j Bloom, which you'll find under the Explore tab of Workspace. The goal is to really help new users get started more easily and to offer a better flow between tools. So you can start by importing data in Workspace with the Import tab, and then you can move right over to Explore and start exploring your data in Bloom. Another great advantage of Workspace is that you can log in once rather than having to log into each of the tools separately and move back and forth between them. So if you want to get started with Workspace, I would encourage you to check out Aura Free, and it will automatically be available as the default experience for new Aura users. You'll have the option to opt out and go back to using the standalone or individual tools if you want to. And if you're an existing Aura user, you will keep your single tools as a default experience right now, but you do have the option to opt into Workspace. So feel free to go try it out. We haven't forgotten about our Aura Enterprise and our self-hosted users. And if you do fall into that category, do keep watch. Details are to be confirmed, but do expect an early access program for Workspace if you're an Aura Enterprise or a self-hosted user. A couple of the features that we added into Bloom, partly to support the Workspace experience, but also that are available in the basic free version of Bloom standalone, are prospective autosync and a default search phrase. So prospective autosync, I'll explain a little bit here. Sorry, I had some animations, but found out that they wouldn't work in the presentation. So I'll try to talk you through the slides a little bit. But we have a concept called perspectives in Bloom. And if you have many different types of nodes, different types of node labels, then you can create a perspective that is just a specific view of the graph. So we like to call this a business view of the graph. And with a perspective, you can have a one-to-one mapping between what we call a category in Bloom and a node label, or you can have a one-to-many mapping where you have a category in Bloom that includes many different types of node labels. So in this example, we have a category called question, and it's mapped to a node type called question. And that's what's reflected on the top of the list on the left and behind. And then over on the right, we have what's called the legend panel that shows you a list of all the different categories you have in Bloom and the colors that those nodes will appear as. So with Perspective Autosync, Bloom will keep track of any new labels that it notices in the database, and it will automatically add a category every time it finds a new label in the database. Now, of course, if you have told Bloom in the Perspective Designer that you don't want a particular category after it's added it, it will remember that and it won't keep re-adding it in. So you can import data with import in Workspace and then move right over to Explore, and Bloom will pick up all of the new labels that have come in through that import and list them as categories. And then if you want to remove certain ones from the perspective, you can do so. You also still do have the option of going out to what we call the perspective gallery in Bloom and creating custom perspectives as you see fit. So this is available also in the free standalone version of Bloom. And if you don't like the behavior, if you're finding that categories are getting added too frequently or unexpectedly, you can turn it off in the settings panel. Another thing that we've added in Bloom for version 2.5 is Show Me a Graph. And what this will do is use a basic search phrase. It will add it into every new perspective that you create in Bloom, so that you can just go to the search bar in Bloom and literally type "show me a graph," and it will run some relatively simple Cipher that will return about 100 random nodes from your graph and their relationships, and you can get started right away looking at your data without having to learn all the different ways that you can use the search box to do full text searches or graph pattern searches, etc. So this should really help new users get started with a quick way to visualize your data. And again, every time you create a perspective, starting with this version of Bloom, then you'll get that "show me a graph" search phrase by default. You can delete it if you don't want it there. And I will note that this does apply only to the basic free version of Bloom, simply because for our enterprise users who might have a lot of established perspectives, we don't want to be adding in new search phrases just automatically. But of course, anyone can go and look at the Cipher in the search phrase and create one themselves if they want to. So now I'd like to talk about a few features that we've added in specifically for analysts. I'll talk about a couple of new context menu items we've added. One is dismiss single nodes, and select related nodes is another. And then I'll talk about Timezone support. Timezone support has been around since about version 2.1, so for quite a while. But I want to call out a few specific features of Timezone support that you might not be aware of. And then I'll talk about graph data science, which we added a few versions ago, which lets you interact with Neo4j's graph data science library in a visual and simple way, so you can experiment with it and get started. So dismiss single nodes does exactly what it sounds like. You can quickly clear any nodes on the scene that don't have a relationship attached to them on the scene. So we're not talking about, if the node has relationships attached to it in the database, that doesn't matter. But on the scene in particular, if you've got nodes that are all by themselves, you might want to quickly clear them so that you can focus on the connected components you have on the scene. So in this picture, there are, 3 blue nodes on the left and 3 blue nodes on the right. You can see that don't have any relationships connected to them. So if you right click in a blank part of the canvas, you'll now see an option to dismiss single nodes, and those nodes will disappear from your scene. So this can be useful for focusing on the connected components, like I said, and just decluttering your scene if you've gotten a lot of single nodes back that you don't think you care about. Another similar feature that we've recently added is select related nodes. And with this feature, what you can do if you have different connected components on the scene, sometimes it can be hard to tell them apart, and you might be interested in one in particular. So if you click on any given node and you right click to get the context menu, you'll see a select related nodes feature. And what that will do is follow out from that node all of the nodes that are connected to it and highlight them. So then you've got the cluster that node you started with is in highlighted, and you can drag it out of the way to a different part of the scene, or you can right click again and use the context menu features that have been around for a while, dismiss or dismiss other nodes. So if you select related nodes and then right click again and say dismiss other nodes, then you're going to wind up just with the component that you selected from the node you started with. Timezone support is another feature that I'd like to talk about. And we've had Timezone support, like I said, for quite a while, since about 2.1. And Neo4j does have multiple different types of datetime data types, and there are a couple of them that include time zones or time offsets. So Bloom now fully supports that, and you can edit those properties if you like to, including the time offset. You can also use the filter panel and the styling panel to filter and style based on the values in those types of properties. Something that I want to point out, and I'm sorry the animation isn't here, is that the filter panel now has an option which is translate time zone to. And there's a checkbox right under where you select the property in the filter panel you're interested in. And if the property is one of the types that includes time zones, then you'll be able to click the Translate Time Zone to button, and you'll get a list of all of the different time offsets that are possible. So in this particular graph, we have IP traffic, and every node represents an IP address, and all of the relationships are traffic flows between them. So those traffic flows have timestamps that include time zones, but imagine that they're all in different time zones. So if you wanted to look for an event that happened, say, after 10:30 in Eastern Standard Time, what you could do is click Translate Time Zones to, and then select the offset GMT-5, which is Eastern Standard Time, and then select after as your filter criteria and move the slider to 10:30. And all of the nodes that happened after 10:30 with respect to Eastern Standard Time would still be visible, and the other ones would be dimmed out. So this is a really powerful way to do time zone-based analysis with time zone data types without having to go back and reformat all your data to a particular time zone. And I'll note that you don't actually change anything in the database when you do this. It only applies locally in the scene while you're working on it. Or if you save the scene, you can save the filter with the scene, of course, but it doesn't actually modify any of your data. And finally, in terms of analyst features, I want to talk about graph data science. So a few versions ago in Bloom, we added graph data science as an element in the side panel. And if you have the GDS library plugin installed in your database, then you can click that button and you'll get a GDS panel that pops out and you can select an algorithm. Right now we have 4 algorithms available. There are 2 centrality and 2 community algorithms, and we're planning to add more later this year, so stay tuned for that. But in the example here, what we would have been able to see if the animation were up would be you would have the betweenness centrality is the one that I selected for the demonstration, and from there you could simply click run algorithm, and Bloom would add a property to the scene, but not to the database, for all of the nodes with the betweenness centrality score that they got. And from there, what you can do is automatically apply rule-based styles so that the nodes that have a higher betweenness centrality get bigger and darker in color. So this can be a really fun and easy way to experiment with different GDS algorithms without having to ever touch the command line. So we're hoping that it's useful for people who are interested in GDS, but don't want to learn how to use it at the command line and write GDS results back to their graph. But we're also hoping it'll be valuable for practicing data scientists who might want to try different things out on smaller sets of data in their scene and decide what they want to go back and apply to their larger graph. So I would really encourage you to try that out. And again, if you have Neo4j desktop, you can install the GDSL plugin and use this feature in the free version of Bloom right away. Now I want to talk a little bit about features for customization that might be useful for developers for their own purposes if they want to customize perspectives for their own use, or to empower other users in the organization who might not be developers. Specifically, I'll talk about scene actions, which are relatively new, and deep links and search phrases, which have both been around for quite a long time. Search phrases are a long-standing Bloom feature, and what we have here in the background is the perspective designer, and we have a tab called Saved Cipher. It used to be just search phrases, but now we have a couple of options. So under Saved Cipher and search phrases, you can write a cipher statement, and in this case, we have a really simple example, and again, we're looking at the same IP data that I was using in the Timezone example. And it's activity on a certain date. So you just type activity on, and then you establish a parameter with a $sign. So in this case, it's activity on $date. And you write a cipher statement that can use that parameter $date. And then any user who has this search phrase, which is packaged with the perspective, can go into the search bar and type activity on, and they can enter a date. And you can even configure search phrases so that they get suggestions. This, again, has been around for quite a while. It's found under the Saved Cipher tab in the Perspective Designer, and this can be a really powerful way to create search phrases for users who, again, might not be writing their own cipher, but have some actions that they need to perform on a regular basis that someone else can provide some cipher for, and they can enter parameters as they need to. Very similar to search phrases, something that we added just this year is scene actions. And rather than executing these from the search bar by typing in the search phrase, these ones are executed from the context menu. So what you'll do to use a scene action is simply select one or more nodes and relationships, right-click on it, and in the context menu, you'll see an item called scene actions. And from there, you'll see a list of any of the scene actions that have been provided in the perspective. The scene actions can also use parameters, but rather than free text parameters that the user would fill in, what you do with the scene action is you use the built-in $ nodes and $ relationships parameters. And those will reference the node and relationship IDs that are in the user's selection. You can also reference specific properties that are in nodes or relationships in the user's selection. So in the example I have here, we're looking at port 80 traffic. And again, with this IP data set that I was showing earlier, if a user selects a node that's a particular IP address and they want to find port 80 traffic, they can just right-click on it. Under scene actions, they'll see port 80 traffic as we've defined it here, and they can run this cipher. We also recently made it possible to change the order of the scene actions. So starting with Bloom 2.5, you can just move them up and down in the Perspective Designer. That's what we're showing here in the foreground. And that way you can decide, if there are scene actions that are more likely to be used more commonly, you can put those at the top, for example. So before that, the scene actions would just appear more or less in the order that they were created. But now you have the ability to control the order in which they show up. Deep links are one final feature for customization that I'll call out just because I'm not sure how many people know about deep links, but we do have folks who get a lot of use out of them. They can be quite powerful. So whether you're using desktop or a web-hosted version of Bloom, you can create a URL that references specific parameters, namely the perspective and the search that you want to run in Bloom. And you can provide that URL to someone so that when they access it, Bloom will load and it will load the perspective and the search that were defined. So you could use a third-party application that presents a link, and when someone clicks on the link, it would launch Bloom, load a particular perspective and a search. That search can be any of the searches that would work in the near natural language search bar within Bloom that exists right now, including search phrases, and you can fill in the parameters for those search phrases as well. So combining deep links and search phrases can actually be quite a powerful way to empower users to open Bloom and get a specific graph based on a specific custom bit of Cipher that's been provided. And finally, I'll talk about a couple of features for the enterprise. So for our enterprise users who have the Bloom Server plugin, we offer central perspective storage and scene saving and sharing. Central perspective storage has been around for quite some time, and scene saving and sharing came with Bloom 2.0 in December of last year. So if you're using the free version of Bloom, whether in Workspace or the standalone version, perspectives are stored in the web browser's local storage, and you can export them from the perspective gallery. So if you look in your perspective gallery, you'll see tiles for all of your different perspectives. And if you click a three-dot menu, you can export that perspective. What you get is a JSON file, and then you can send that file to someone else who can open Bloom. And in the gallery, again, there's an import perspective button that they can use to import that JSON file to get the perspective. So you can share perspectives that way with the free version of Bloom. But with the enterprise version of Bloom, what we can do is store the perspectives in the database, and we'll store them with nodes that are labeled with the Bloom perspective label. And you can share perspectives via database roles. So in Bloom, in the Perspective Designer, you have the option to share under the Sharing tab, which will be present if you have the plugin. And from the Sharing tab, you can select database roles, and anyone who logs into Bloom and has one of the roles that a particular perspective has been shared with will be able to actually see that perspective automatically in the perspective gallery. So someone can customize perspectives with particular views and default styles and search phrases and scene actions. And then users can simply log in and see those perspectives available in the gallery if you have the paid version of Bloom. You can also see in real time any updates that are made to the perspective. So if a user has a perspective open and changes are being made by someone, then you can see with a little book icon at the top of the perspective window who's made changes to the perspective and how recently. And finally, I'll talk about scene saving and sharing, which is another enterprise plugin feature of Bloom that's been available since 2.0, which was December last year, where enterprise customers can save multiple scenes per perspective. And as long as you have write access to the Bloom scene label, again, we're storing this in the database under nodes with the Bloom scene label, then you can save as many perspectives, or rather as many scenes as you need to. And those scenes will persist. You can go back to them at any point and work on them. So you can have different scenes for different purposes. And you can also share your scenes with other users via database roles. So under our export menu in Bloom, where you currently have export CSV and export screenshot, if you do have the enterprise version of Bloom with the plugin, then you'll be able to also click the share scene option there. And from there, you can add roles and share out your scenes. And you'll see on the top right, there's a red box around a tab in the scene list called Shared with Me. So any user who has a role to which scenes have been shared will find those scenes under the Shared with Me tab. We've recently added in the ability to search through those scenes. So if you do have a long list of them and you're looking for a particular one, you can filter it now with the search box that's at the top of that scene list. So that's all I have for you for slides today. And I hope that I was able to get across the point that Bloom can make the graph more useful to more people, and it can really help anyone who wants to dig into their data to do exploratory analysis, but it can also help developers to provide custom Cipher through search phrases and scene actions to others who can quickly interact with data without actually having to learn any code. So with that, I'll see if we have any questions. So we have one, which is what is Neo4j design language? And Neo4j design language is a common set of UI elements that we're going to be using across all of our tooling. And that will make it both more efficient for us to work on our tooling, but it'll also provide a better experience. So you'll see a more common look and feel across all of our tooling. We have another question, which is there a plan to have Bloom be available as part of GCP Neo4j Community Edition? So Bloom only works with the Enterprise Edition of Neo4j, and it will work with the free downloadable Neo4j desktop, which does come packaged with an enterprise version of the database, but it doesn't work with the Community Edition. We have another question, which is, will show me a graph show a different graph every time you click it? And the answer is yes. So it's just going to show you a random sampling of your graph. And we are thinking about ways that we could have more interesting prepackaged searches that would show specific or more heterogeneous parts of your graph that takes into account the different types of labels that exist there. But for now, it is just a very simple search phrase. And if you look at it in a perspective where it's been provided, if you've created a perspective with the free version of Bloom starting from 2.4, you'll find that in any of the new perspectives you create. You can have a look at the Cipher and see exactly what it does. So I'm seeing another question here. If you'd like to assign a category based on how a node participates in a relationship, so for example, a person is a member of a committee with a role chairperson, would like the person holding the chair role on any committee to have a different color than the normal persons. So what you can do in Bloom is, so there are a couple of things you can do. The user can manually add a label to any node that they want to. But if you're just wanting to color nodes based on some criteria, we do have rule-based styling available in Bloom. So you can define the criteria that that you want to use to base a color on. So you could probably do what you're asking to do here. I'm not totally sure I fully understand the context, but you would look in the legend panel on the right-hand side, and under the styling, there's a default tab, and there's also a rule-based tab. So you could go in there and you could define a rule that would set a specific color based on some criteria. And then we have another question, not sure that you got the perspective link right. What exactly can be shared? Categories in saved Cipher or a specific display of node with their graphical position? Okay, so that's a very good and fair question. So the Bloom perspective defines what categories are available to the Bloom user. And it doesn't actually save a specific display of nodes with their graphical position. What that is a scene. So the perspective stores the saved Cipher, so the search phrases and the scene actions, and also a list of the categories that are in Bloom, which can have one or many labels associated with each and a default color and styling for each category. So the perspective is the definition of which categories and map to labels, as well as which relationships, and the default styling, as well as the saved Cipher, so the scene actions and the search phrases. What constitutes the specific display of nodes with their graphical position, that's what we call a scene. And in the free version of Bloom, you essentially have one scene. And when you open Bloom, again, Bloom will give you the option to either start with a new scene or to restore your previous scene. So you can, by default, save one scene that way. But if you have the enterprise version of Bloom with the plugin, then users can store multiple scenes and save them and persist them and go back to work on them. And those will all have the nodes with their specific graphical position and any styling that they've applied to them, for example. Okay, and I don't see any more questions, and I think we are running out of time. So
yeah, thank you so much for this great presentation, Jeff. So everyone stay tuned. We are going to be back in a few minutes, okay?